Peace, our melanated family. Hope everyone is doing good this evening. Welcome to another broadcast of Melanated Solutions Media. I'm Kashama Sankofa. We have brother Duke here co-hosting with me. And absent this evening is Tiffany Bliss Brown, who also hosts Everyone Loves Bliss. She could not make it this evening, and she will be missed. But we definitely look forward to having her on the next broadcast.
All right. Welcome to you, Deshaun, and thank you for immediately sharing. I guess I'm going to get started with these family feedbacks from our last session. So the last time we came together, we were talking about can we survive Black dysfunction? And we wind up having a full discussion. Not only were we here with Tiff, but also Dr. Cleo Monago joined us. So first things first, we had a bunch of heys and hellos in the chat. And so just a shout out to all those family. We want to say hello again to our Ian, our Uwazi Cortez, Kat Mahari. We love you all. Thank you for joining in with us. Interesting notes. Nashir Saran has said willy-nilly in reference to us using the term ally for people whenever they didn't even work for that particular title. We also have a comment from Paul Ford who said, thank you for convincing me to see this film. We did a pretty lively discussion on Lee Daniels' latest work when it comes to Billie Holiday. Yes, right. Billie Holiday film. And so we encourage you all to see that in order to understand. I mean, it was news for me, at least, that there was an actual conspiracy that played out against Billie Holiday. She did not just die of an overdose. The government had a real involvement in that particular scandal. So we'd love for you all to, come on, check in with us. And that's family feedback.
All right, so now before we go ahead and show you our current events video, our regulars, our melanoids, y'all already know, like, share, and subscribe on YouTube. For those of you who have just joined us for the first time, you may be joining us on Facebook. Make sure you like the post, make sure you like the video, and then bring yourself on over to YouTube and like, share, and subscribe there. We want to definitely keep building the YouTube audience. And Adam, if you can go ahead and roll that beautiful bean footage of our current events. All right. So first thing, we've had some tragedies happen in the country over the past 2 weeks. There was a shooting in Atlanta first, and it was an Asian spa that was shot up. And I believe, do you remember how many victims there were, Duke?
I believe it was 8 people who passed away. I believe there was 10 in total. 10 total, 8 women. I believe that was the last time I checked. Yeah. And
then after that, a man went on a shooting spree in a grocery store in Boulder, Colorado. And I believe a handful of people were killed, some injured. There, when you walk around, flags everywhere at half mast. And, there's a lot of conversation around like why so much violence in such a short amount of time. Now, Duke, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but to my knowledge, the two events were definitely unrelated. Like the grocery store incident had nothing to do with Asian bias or Asians or anything like that.
Yeah,
right?
It was two unrelated events. In fact, the majority of victims from the grocery store ones were white. And so there's been some people trying to push a narrative about white victimization in that, because I believe the person who committed that particular incident, I have not fact checked this, but his name was more ethnic, not African, but apparently someone quote unquote of color.
Okay, well, I mean, our thoughts and hearts are, with the families and loved ones of the victims. The Atlanta spa shooting, I think, really, the media is doing a lot with the whole hate against Asians. But I just find it interesting that, the narrative that we were hearing about Black people needing to be better allies to Asians and the, acts that Black people are so-called committing or allegedly committing against Asians with this, high rate all of a sudden. We're not seeing that narrative when it came to the spa shootings. In fact, it's like they're trying to find like all types of other reasons to say this man went and did what he did, aside from the fact that the victims were Asian.
Yeah, some. I mean, I'm sure people have heard, but they're painting him as a sexual deviant. Some of the sexual fetishes. Also, tried painting him as depressed, and just had a quote unquote bad day. Per the cop who also shared anti-Asian uh, paraphernalia rather on his social media. So uh, these are the stories that's being brought up. We already know where this conversation is going to be headed and where people are going to put their foot down is a conversation on gun control. This is still one of the only countries left that still has a rampant serious issue with mass shootings for some reason. Now, I will say that I found it curious. It's that one mass shooting occur, and then I think 3 days later or within the same week, another one occurs, and it's just like, what's happening here? But
Well,
we also know that America is just not good at getting its guns in order.
well, I have I have a different stance on guns, gun
Mm-hmm.
rights, so-called gun control. I think we need white people control, honestly,
Mm-hmm.
because that's who's going around shooting up massive numbers of people, with some of the craziest or far out bizarre motivations in doing it.
Mm-hmm.
We know that our communities have its share of violence and death and homicide that happens. And I'm not going to defend it at all. Black people killing other black people. One thing I will say though is that there's always a reason, and I'm not saying it's a legitimate reason, but there's
Mm-hmm.
always a story. There's a motivation behind the violence. Very rare do we see these random acts of violence happening in our community. You know what I'm saying? And that's
Yeah.
something we're going to have to start really looking at. Honestly, we talk about gun control because the first thing that happens when, things get criminalized or things get put into laws, it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't apply to the white population. When they say guns are illegal, the first place they're coming is into my neighborhood, trying to
Mm-hmm.
kick down doors and confiscate guns. And the same Dylan Roofs and whoever, all the rest of these weirdos that go out and kill, like they, you know what I'm saying, like they're spraying roaches or something, they're gonna still have guns because nobody's checking for them.
I
In
recall
this
asking
world,
a question that no one had answered on my social media. I had asked, I said, I wonder, do white people sit in anxiousness and fear watching the news whenever they hear like a new atrocious, inhumane act has occurred on a wide scale inside this country? Do they ever look at the camera and be like, I hope the perpetrator isn't white. Please don't let him be white.
hell no.
Like the way that we look at things when we hear crimes or petty crimes or whatever else, and we like, please don't let him be black. I'd be like, do white you have any shame when
Well,
it
honestly,
comes
they
to
aren't being
this?
held accountable, dude. And when I say that, it's like
Mm-hmm.
the one thing I used to always say to people when they would talk about the black on black crime narrative is I
Mm-hmm.
would let them know that no other group, right? I would argue in this world puts more effort into neutralizing conflict and de-escalating violence and reducing violence and harm in their own communities than black people.
That's actually scientifically data proven. I remember doing the research study on that too.
But where
Yeah.
are the programs that are designed to as an intervention in the lives of these young white men and young white
Mm-mm.
males before they go out and do what they do?
Yeah,
Nobody is
it's
looking at that and saying that needs to happen.
it's time to start pathologizing white people. It's time to start doing it. I mean, there's something going on with white mothers and white fathers. If you got to keep raising children that do this on a wide scale with absolutely no repercussions, it's time to start pathologizing your parenting behavior, your attraction to violence. It's time to start
Yeah,
doing real work in order to curve that, because at this point, even you all are starting to be the victims of this inhumanity. But anyways,
Lana Latham said something that's very important. Has also heard the spa was cited for sexual activity several times over the years. Why were they even allowed to operate that long? That's very common in a lot of cities in the U.S. Lana.
mhm.
These Asian spas. a lot of them are, conducting like sex work up in there. And
Mm-hmm.
if you heard Keisha Bottoms, the mayor down there in Atlanta, she's talking about how they don't want to go into that and they don't want to talk about that. But I mean, look, how are we going to get to the truth if we're not looking at every aspect of the situation? And when a black person is victimized, every inch of our lives are scrutinized. I know every drug that was in George Floyd's vein, or what drugs they said were in it, right? I know that he supposedly had COVID, all types of stuff that have nothing to do with what that monster Derek Chauvin did to him. We know about him. We know that Trayvon Martin was suspended from school for something, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
anyway, so
Well, here we
but,
are.
but in other current events, we did have Genius Aretha aired this week. I was able to see um episodes 2 through I think 3 or something, 2, 3, and 4 or something. I can't remember.
Mm-hmm.
But
And tell us your thoughts about it. What's your thoughts?
I'm gonna be honest with you, man. I couldn't be very critical because it was very emotional for me
Mm-hmm.
watching Aretha's story, and I know a lot about I dear mother Aretha. And so just kind of watching the story, it did have me very emotional. I'll say that much. And it wasn't a lot of critique that I could give. However, I noticed some inaccuracies, and the inaccuracies that I noticed were things that you kind of know if you are black and kind of grow up around maybe some gospel circuits.
Mm-hmm.
So, kind of growing up, I kind of knew some people, in gospel or whatever. Some of the things they told me about Reverend C.L. Franklin, even what's that brother Reverend James Cleveland, who was a big part of Aretha's life, things that I know I won't necessarily say on air, that I know that they just kind of put something in there. But the family in particular,
Mm-hmm.
they slammed the movie. And what I find out is that they slammed it before it was made because National Geographic refused to consult with them and refused to take any of their advice on the film or the miniseries, and they felt like there was certain to be some inaccuracies. Now, also, as Danae Washington just pointed out, should we support European black acting ADOS characters? Okay. Another criticism of the movie has come from some people who think that Cynthia Erivo should not have been playing the role. Some people are saying because too many roles that are about black people who are from the U.S., what I call U.S. blacks. I don't use ADOS or American Descendants of Slavery, and there's plenty of reasons why, but why, blacks or Africans in the U.S., many are passed up for a lot of roles, and they are given to British actors who have like a Nigerian or West African Caribbean background.
Mm-hmm.
What
And
are your
most
thoughts?
notably giving to individuals who have a track record. Specifically, Cynthia has a track record of stating that she doesn't really respect the history or the culture of African Americans, doesn't really understand it. And with that being said, and I believe in cross dialogue talk. That is my absolute. That's my message. It is always about finding that good point in healing. But there's a reason why Hollywood chooses individuals who does not respect the legacy of what we've been through to quote unquote represent this history. It's also a reason why you don't see the reason why you don't see black individuals born here who have the history, who have the context, is that we aren't going to allow them to say certain or phrase certain things inside of these scenes or portray things in these scenes that are disloyal to what our people have actually been through. I believe with my whole heart that had it been a black woman that was born here, that you was not going to have no fictional black man be one of the number one or number two villains inside of the Harriet Tubman film, like it was with Cynthia Erivo. So it's different things going on here, and when we hear the story multiple times, if you don't know, and someone pointed it out in the comment sections when it comes to Queen of Salsa, but every time that a black icon is being immemorialized with one of these videos, Hollywood even makes it a point, even if the person that we're doing a documentary about is still alive, they make it a point for us not to be able to communicate with the family, with the person who is still alive in order to tell these particular stories. And there's everyone should have a question mark when that happens. Like if I'm supposed to be retelling a story, I should be able to go to the author and not some white person retelling the story.
Right. And so this is my perspective on Cynthia Erivo as well as Hollywood. Quotation, that's what is used to describe the industry, I guess. Hollywood routinely getting black actors who are not from the US experience to play black people from the US experience. And I see this as not being very much different from in corporate America on the jobs and stuff like that. Many times white people want to deal with black immigrants because they know that a lot of times there isn't the historical context. Meaning, this person coming from Nigeria or Ghana, they're not coming from this experience that you and I have in this country. So powers that be know that they can be manipulated sometimes or used, I would say, to their liking. Cynthia Erivo, I'll say this, she had very little power or control over the Harriet movie, right? But what she did have was the ability to say, I'm not going to do this, right? Or well, I'm not going to be part of something that that denigrates black men in this way. However, we got to ask ourselves, did she have that conviction in her though? Did she even see anything wrong? And
most likely not.
I don't even think she even picked up on it. This type of stuff that we pick up on because we have that critical eye. You feel me? We got that critical analysis going on.
And I want to make sure that, especially to our audience, that we know that this is not an exclusive issue, because when it came to Jennifer Hudson playing Winnie Mandela, which should not have happened, the same issues occurred. The same issues occurred. And so we have to be a lot more strategic and engaged with who gets to play our particular characters. There's a difference between quote unquote honoring someone and trying to build up representation and in performing a lie. Because that's what happened in the Winnie Mandela film. That's what happened in this Aretha Franklin film.
I never
so many
saw
others.
That. How did that accent go? Jennifer Hudson doing Winnie.
Ooh. So again, this will tell you all you need to know. She was not allowed to talk to Winnie when Winnie was alive to do this film. That's she was not allowed. Actually discouraged from going to go talk to Winnie Mandela. And
she went along with it though.
She went along with it. That is the stupidity of the day.
Now, see, okay, so I'm glad you mentioned that, because Jennifer Hudson is what y'all call FBA, right? She's come from as they say, the killing fields of North America, right? Of the American South, so to speak. She comes from this experience, but she still didn't have that African internationalist or that Pan-African analysis to say, no, there's a reason they're keeping me from Winnie, because Winnie is a rider, right? And it's the same thing when it comes to a lot of actors coming here playing roles when they come from Britain or wherever. So
yeah, I'm gonna just call out a few comments here. I want to say someone had came in much earlier and had asked, could we speak about King Randall? I'm not familiar about this particular story, but I do know that when we open up the chat at some point later on tonight, if you are still here, ECJ, we would love for you to give us a little bit of information about that. I see, King Randall.
Randall.
King, yeah, I don't think they're a real king. I think it's like some white person in a cowboy hat or something. I was trying to get some info while we were here, but I can't find it. But you can all type it in the chat. We would love to hear. I also see here a comment that says that they have issues with Issa Rae playing in African American as opposed to an African in America. And I want to say I didn't even know that Issa Rae was Indigenous African. I didn't know that.
Well, I have a problem with Issa Rae dropping like N-word every. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's everywhere. I remember one episode. And mind you, I'm a big fan of Insecure People. I love the series, and it's unfortunately getting ready to end soon. But me and my friend, we have a counter that we do when we watch the shows, and so he's really sensitive to the B word. He doesn't believe that any man should ever use the word B and in reference to a woman. And I've adopted this into my principles as well. But we watch Insecure and we have a B word counter and I have an N word counter, and
It is
the
all the same.
numbers just goes up. I remember one episode N word was at 76 inside of one episode. It was really ridiculous, and so it's not even just from dialogue, but also where either you happen to see it typed out or if you happen to hear it in the song. It was really really crazy.
But we don't even talk like that. Is the crazy, the messed up part. Like, yeah, black people say the N word, but we got other words too. We don't.
And this is the same thing that we said when it came to Lee Daniels and Billie Holiday's film, right? Even from way, way back in the day, like the N word was just put in every other sense. Every other word was the N word, and it's just like even back then we did not use it that heavily. But here we are. But I think we can move on to this next topic about who's in love with the cocoa and can't get no more cocoa.
Europe has been in love with the cocoa ever since they discovered the cocoa. What was that, like around the 1700s, maybe 1600s? I think they might have discovered the cocoa. But Ghana has announced, well, the president of Ghana, excuse me, has announced that they will no longer be selling the cocoa to Switzerland as well as other countries, mostly European countries, who are parasitic, capitalist, imperialists who have been plunging and pillaging and raping our continent and our motherland ever since they knew it was there, or ever since they got their weight up a little bit and then came over to do it. So kudos to Ghana, man. Last year I heard they stopped selling to the US because the US was on that parasitic capitalist, white bully, type stuff. So hey,
I'm probably going to mispronounce it, but I find it super important in order to start adding it to our context. Like, so it's Ghana's president, and the name is Nana Akufo-Addo. Believe that
you did
maybe
very good.
I'm trying, but you know the names. So I just find it important to put a name to this mythical man who exists, who's alive, and who is tangible. But yeah, saying no about that. And so funny enough, even before this stream started, I was wondering. I was like, I wonder if there's going to be a war, because Europeans don't like being told no about anything, especially with when it comes to resources in Africa. And so even if something as simple as cocoa is enough for them to find insurgents and do some dirty work. And so we need to pay a close eye to what's going on in Ghana as a result of this decision, because remember what they did over tea.
Britain, I was going to say they didn't fought over tea. Britain went to war with Ghana over a golden stool. You hear me? A stool, a golden stool. It meant something to the people, but they went to war with Ghana over it because Ghana refused to give it up to them. So, hey, I mean, I hope not. They better not attack Ghana. Hands off Ghana, Switzerland.
Shout out to
I might go and join up.
Shout out to Soga. Danae Washington said they killed / assassinated leader who stopped foreigners from exporting African resources. We have a comment from Soga that said N-word is poison to our spirits, which we need to purge from our lexicon. Amen. And so Lana, shout out to you. You said you in love with the cocoa too. Can't lie. Big fan. I'm a big fan of the cocoa as well. Different flavors, different shades. I love the cocoa.
And sometimes I get it for the Lolo.
Yes. But where's that brother who remixed that when you need him?
But so let's go ahead and move into the title discussion of this evening's broadcast. We are discussing Pimpology, decoding political trick language and fake black agendas. Right? So what are these fake black agendas and what's the political trick language that's being used? One, the George Floyd Act was recently passed, signed, and in that act is being heralded, by the Biden-Harris administration, Biden supporters who don't know no better, some of them, and the Congressional Black Caucus, or as some people call the Congressional Black Talkers, or the Congressional Black Caucus. They are in full support of it. You may have seen in the flyer that we were marketing, they took a nice little photo op with all their masks on, standing beside, looking all proud of this bill. But what is it exactly, and what is it going to do for our people? You have a perspective on this?
So I really just took the time to pull up some keynotes about it. I want to go over it. I found some trick language already. So the very first bullet point under the save lives by banning chokeholds and no knock warrants clause says it's going to ban chokeholds and car toy holds at the federal level and conditions law enforcement funding the state and local governments banning chokeholds. Now the trick language about that is that chokeholds were already illegal in many of the police departments. So all right. Moving forward, we got another. It says banning no-knock warrants in drug cases at the federal level and conditions law enforcement funding for state and local governments banning no-knock warrants at the local and state level. And it says it requires that deadly force be used as only as a last resort and requires officers to employ de-escalation techniques first. Am I hearing anything that is quote-unquote different than what the police are already supposed to be doing? Because I can tell you that the current laws for police is that they are supposed to use deadly force as a last resort, and that they are supposed to engage in de-escalation protocols. However, this says absolutely nothing new. It's also talking about the use of and requiring body cameras, in which we've already familiar with police departments requiring body cameras, and then the officer shuts off the body camera or covers it up or decides that it's no longer useful at some point or that it's quote unquote an endangerment to their life. Okay, moving on. Hold police accountable in court. Make it easier to prosecute offending officers by amending the federal criminal statute to prosecute police misconduct. Okay. And it says enables individuals to recover damage in civil court when law enforcement officers violate their constitutional rights by eliminating qualified immunity for law enforcement. So it's.
Now, mind you, that's big language too, dude.
Yeah.
So if you go into the full text of the act, it's basically they're not eliminating qualified immunity. They're putting an amendment on the law that actually gave police qualified immunity. And they're just basically saying that you can't use certain defenses for this, in order to get qualified immunity. So, I mean, but it's like you say, it's a lot of political trick language, and it gets worse, dude. See, I'm glad you read through that stuff, but what a lot of people don't know is there are hundreds of millions of dollars that are being allocated to police departments and into law enforcement with this act.
So, I'm actually getting ready to drop the link to Adam if he would be so kind as to share that with our people or post it up. I do encourage you all to take a look at what is supposed to be our justice, right? This is supposed to be our justice, and this is what they're telling us, and it is absolutely, a lot of it is absolutely nothing different than what has already been put in place. I
mean, it's crazy thing is they went and that whole defund the police, that was some more political trick language, right? Because before the defund movement came about, I remember back in 2016 being with the comrades and the real revolutionaries talking about abolish the police, Black community control of our own policing. That's what we were talking. And then when corporate activism got involved, it became defund the police and all that stuff. But my point is, they went from so-called defund the police to let's give them hundreds of millions of dollars now to make them better.
Danae Washington had asked, did New York abolish qualified immunity? And I'm glad you brought that up. I actually wound up seeing that article today. And what I would say to you is it requires more investigation. When I wound up reading into it, what it stated, Danae, was that it would remove qualified immunity for individuals seeking to sue police when it came to specifically individuals who felt like their rights were violated in a particular altercation with police. And it specifically mentioned things like search and seizure. It does not mention a total recall of qualified immunity, but rather that qualified immunity is going to have less strength in court because certain things won't be covered anymore. And so it requires more investigation and really finding those things out. And this is it's just super important to be wary of as this particular broadcast is titled, of the Pimpology, because they will tell you anything in these headlines, and then you read into it, and it's not what you think.
Not at all. I mean, and also, y'all remember that 1994 crime bill too? Guess what? The George Floyd Act actually strengthens funding and monies that are going into law enforcement and to states, that is directly linked to the 94 crime bill, meaning basically they have just put amendments on the 94 crime bill, on laws that were created in 1968. I think around some of it might be around qualified immunity. They're just taking all of their old leftover, you know what I'm saying, legalese and trick bag language that they've been using to destroy us, so much, so to speak, and just wrapped it up in a package and put George Floyd's name on it. And I guess we're supposed to be stupid enough to be grateful or something like that. And the Congressional Black Caucus, man, damn, defunding the police. They need to be defunded too. Defund the Congressional Black Caucus because they're trash.
Our community is hitting it right on the head. Soga said, "Where are the penalties for killing cops?" And that has not been mentioned yet. When they start going to jail or being held financially liable for killing innocent Black people, that's what people have been asking for, and that is not what is being supplied in this political jargon going on. But Danae said right on the head, what is next? Abolishing kneeling on throats for 8 seconds? Like who needs to tell you that? Who needs to tell you this in a documentation? That's common sense. If you don't know that before getting out of third grade, we have an issue.
We definitely do. So so there's some more stuff going on too. They just trying to pimp us all over the place, man. Along with the COVID-19 Act, you know, the funding that went along with that, we had a Black Farmers Bill, or what they're calling a Black Farmers Bill. And this word reparations is being thrown out like very loosely.
Oof, that part.
In reference to not only the Black Farmers Bill, there's some trickery going on out in, I think, Kansas or something like that, where they're giving people loans, house loans or something, and calling it reparations. Listen, y'all, we better get it together and start controlling the narrative and start shutting this stuff down, because I mean, pretty soon they're just gonna be outright peeing on our heads and calling it rain. When you go into that so-called Black Farmers Bill, it is a whole POC, minority nothing burger, meaning any and everybody who calls themselves a minority or disadvantaged is eligible and has a piece of this funding.
Yeah, I'm actually looking for the comment now. I'm probably just going to have to paraphrase. If anyone's familiar with Dr. Stacey Patton, who is a writer and educator here in Maryland, she had posted a really engaging status and just said that anytime you are giving me money and calling it reparations, but it comes with conditions as far as how I use that money or that I must pay it back, then it's not reparations, it's a loan. And that's what we need to be working with, that particular language. And it's super, super important that enough of our community gets a hang of what's going on here, so that way we are not scapegoated and thrown away and bamboozled. That's the word I'm looking for. We are bamboozled in this reparations discussion, because they say, well, we gave you a Black Farmers Bill in the George Floyd Act. That's reparations. No, that's not repair.
Well, you see, dude, and this trick language, they didn't just it ain't like Biden got in office and then decided to become a trickster, right? They were using this trick language and this pimpology during the election season, when they came out with his lift up your head and shout, what is it? Lift every voice plan. It was full of trick language. Full of trick language. I mean, come on. They were going in talking about that the plan addressed Black women. You go in and you read the document. All it does is it makes reference to the legislation around equal pay for women in general. And then it gives you these misleading statistics, you know, around how much Black women make, not showing that Black people in general make a fraction or have the fraction of the wealth that other groups in this country, such as white and Asians, whoever, have. I mean, we got to stop being tricked and fooled. And I think a lot of it is, I don't believe Black people are that dumb. I don't believe we're that stupid. Honestly, it's a case of fantasy, man. It's a case of you being so desperate for something to be thrown your way so that we don't have to fight for it, so that we don't have to make people uncomfortable. You're so desperate for it to be given to us, you accept anything.
Yeah. I'm seeing here Lowell had asked, what about voter suppression? What have they done? SCOTUS gutted the Voting Rights Act in 2012, but what have the Clintons, Pelosi, the unions, or nonprofit industrial complex done? I can't answer that, Lowell, but I can answer that. I don't know if you know, but about as recent as the last 24 to 48 hours, we had a black senator, black lawmaker in Georgia was handcuffed and arrested after she knocked on the governor's door while he signed into law sweeping elections bills that will sharply restrict voting access. While the lawmaker, State Representative Park Cannon, has since been released from jail, she's now facing felony charges for attempting to watch Governor Brian Kemp sign a bill that has been described as nothing less than Jim Crow 2.0. And this is in response, for any of those that don't know, this is in response directly to Trump claiming that he actually won the election and something quote unquote fishy went on. So now they are signing, at least in Georgia, some more voter suppression laws and acts. So this is where we're at.
I mean, I don't know that sister. I'm gonna have to find out who she is. But we've been doing politics backwards for so long. This is what happens when you do politics backwards. This is what happens when you don't fight to secure, your own economics and resources first. This is when you don't fight for grassroots first. And then you have these people put up so supposedly representing you. And then even if they do, want to be about it, even if they do want to resist and they do want to start represent you, where's the support for them? They can be, hauled off and taken to jail like anybody else. So what good is it having these leaders and they get treated like some
in this position
off the street
for knocking on the door because you was like, wait, what are you signing? I wish I was arrested for knocking on my boss's door and say, I don't really understand this contract that you get ready to sign. I wish that happened. But here we are playing with white people in their politics, decoding political trick language and fake black agendas. We haven't mentioned it today, but please join our community by texting 410-826-6264. By texting that number, you can join in on a discussion with our community. You can get access to when we are going live. You'll have opportunities to speak with us on the show or broadcast. You can also suggest topics, various different things going on in there. I see Lana is here. Lana also joined us for one of our more private discussions. We happen to have a breaking bread discussion not too long ago, and another one is coming up very, very soon. So if you want to be in a more private Zoom setting with the host and really talking about some community issues and finding some solutions, please text our community number to have a chance at that.
Okay, so I want us to get something from this broadcast. Of course, like I want us to get something out of every broadcast, but specifically I want us to be able to recognize some of this language when we see it, because we just keep letting it slide and nobody is breaking it down. When you see POC, people of color, person of color, and you got to watch it, especially if they're referring to something that only deals with black people, right? We talk about reparations and people start talking about, people of color have had it, blah, blah, blah. No. This is not about people of color. We're talking about black people. And even the whole idea of people of color is you're just saying non-white, basically. Everybody that ain't white, right? And then what type of respect are you putting on different groups anyway when you say that? Now, I understand in certain, contexts, we do have to say non-white, or people of color, if that's what you want to use, because there are conversations that are to be had that, focuses on European, history or things that have to do with white power specifically. But when you see that POC and newly we have BIPOC, and I believe that stands for Black Indigenous People of Color. When you see those trick bag words, you got to look at it and say, something's wrong with this, and we got to start being critical thinkers. What are your perspectives on the whole POC?
Honestly, just don't use it. I haven't found a specific reason why that terminology is actually important for any of the work that I do in my life or when I'm advocating for my people specifically. Even when we are talking about the collective, hell, just take the time to name who you are talking about because oftentimes when we're talking about the quote unquote collective or people that's represented in the term people of color, we're not even talking about everyone. We may just be talking about Black people and Native Americans at that point. That ain't hard to say, or indigenous people. Like that's res-
It's hard to say if you don't,
yeah,
if you're worried or you're questioning whether
yeah,
Black is enough.
yeah. That is the key. Um, I do know that revolution requires specificity. It requires us to mention our specific roles and our specific troubles and our specific wants. And using terms like POC is a way, and oftentimes really for liberal white spaces in order to feel more comfortable, in order to make things more murky, in order to feel as if you are being politically correct by thinking of everyone, even when an issue may only be affecting one particular group at a time. That I mean, at this point, and I hate to put it this way, but it's just the truth. Jews ain't asking for people of color when they're looking at their specific reparations in history when it comes to the Holocaust. That ain't, indigenous people didn't go through that kind of Holocaust. So the money for the Holocaust is not for people of color. It's
Asians aren't doing it either.
Yeah.
Asians aren't doing it either. They are saying stop Asian hate. They're not saying stop
Mhm.
POC hate.
There you go. Right.
I
And
mean,
so just be specific and know that Black is enough when it comes to that. And I know that there's infighting, even amongst our group, so there's infighting. It's like, well, I don't know if we should be called Black or African American or Negro or like all these things, but we know what we mean. And other people also know what we mean when we're talking about the very specific trials and traumas that this group of people has faced living in this country, living with this skin.
yeah, just cut it out. That people of color stuff, man. Black is
Mm-hmm.
enough. If you're talking about Black people, talk about Black people. And stop. I'm gonna tell you something else too. I don't have
Mm-hmm.
stop with this black and brown stuff. If you only talk about Black people too, like no,
Yeah.
we ain't. I mean, we ain't. Yeah, there's a Latin or an indigenous struggle. That happens with people from Mexico or Guatemala
Yeah.
or Cuba or Puerto Rico. You feel me? Right? And there are African people. Cuba is one of the blackest places, on this planet. Right? However, the struggle that Black Cubans have in Cuba is around them being Black. The
Mm-hmm.
struggle that Black people have anywhere in this world is about them being Black. So, I mean, yeah, there is a brown struggle.
If you want to join in on this conversation, Adam has actually just dropped the link, good people. If you click on that link, if you have a question or a comment, we're going to keep the conversation going. We're going to end around 8 today, like on the dot, hopefully, in order to keep up with our family. We want to check in. So if you have a question or comment, join that link and we would love to talk with you.
Make sure y'all join us.
Yes,
Now,
yes.
another word that I'm sure you hear a lot, Duke, and I know it's probably it probably get under your skin because you come from a city that is like 70% Black, but yet I'm sure you've been called a minority more than
That part.
most.
So listen, I
And
had so
I come from
much.
the Black belt of the Deep South, and I've been called a minority.
So listen, I've had deep, um, I don't know, like psychological conversations about this term minority because I heard it so much growing up. And then to find out later on in life, as you read, as you just explore a little bit in the world, that we the fucking majority. I'm sorry, we are the majority, and we're dealing with being considered a minority and all the implications that minority comes up with, or as like it being small, living in a democracy, and you have the quote unquote minority vote, and so there you got like all the implications that come with this term. And how it's not even true to the nature of the world, right? And especially in Baltimore, again, as Kashama mentioned, this is a 70% Black city, and we still referring to each other as, hey, my small person, my small majority, small number. We can make the decisions here, and we have no clue.
Absolutely no clue. And I mean, it's not just Baltimore. There are plenty of places in this country you can go and just You don't know whether you're in the U.S. or whether you're in Senegal somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, I remember talking to a friend, my best friend actually. She's from South Carolina, and I was talking about visiting her in Charleston, and I was saying that I wanted to go to Oyotunji village as well while I was in South Carolina. She's like, "What is that?" I said, "It's an African village right there in South Carolina." She said, "Oh, you got all the Africans you want to see right here on Charleston Street." I'm like, "Yeah, that's true." And we laugh about it, but there's plenty of places in this country where you can't throw a rock without hitting us, and we're still being called minorities. It affects us psychologically.
It really does. I mean, we can be the highest amount of people in the workplace, in the college, like it, and we still calling each other the minority. At a predominantly black college, we calling each other minorities.
It makes no sense into our politics, because then we let Joseph Biden get up there and say for minorities, and then we go, "Oh, you're talking about us."
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Us.
It is definitely a damning context for us to reference ourselves in that way as a minority in this country, because even in the instances where it's quote unquote true, where we happen to be the smaller number in a specific instance, we operate as a minor. We operate in minority context, and that is not, we get bigly, people, as Trump would say, get bigly.
It's so interesting you said that, dude. Like, we operate in a minor, you know what I'm saying, with a minor mindset when it comes to our politics. There was a story that I was told by the doctor, right? Of someone who,
Dr. Monago, for y'all who don't know.
Yeah, Dr. Cleo Monago, he joins us from time to time. But he was telling me, a story about someone who they just assume that the Amasi Center, which is the Amasi Center for Black Culture and Wellness in Baltimore, they assume that it was owned by a white nonprofit, right? They assume,
I remember that
Amasi was not its own entity that can stand on its own, right? In the face of other entities, white or otherwise. He just assumed out of nowhere that Amasi was under some other white nonprofit.
Yep.
Despite people who are walking around there like me and you.
And I mean, to be clear, and that's them telling on themselves, because they are famous for that. I mean, especially anyone who gets into the nonprofit industry, it is stories for days of Black people working tirelessly in order to build up representation, equality, in making sure that these institutions are more equitable to Black people. And then white people will take that information, build a whole new center, call it something else, and then take the Black people's ideas and say, yes, this is for Black people specifically, and we came up with this, and not pay the brainchilds who came up with these particular ideas. And so they're telling on themselves with that. And so yeah, it was definitely a funny moment that we had to experience here in Baltimore when it came to the Amasi Center. But it is Black-owned, people. It's so beautiful when we have events there and we tell people, it was like, no, you ain't got to leave at a certain time. Just leave because I'm tired. But
right. Exactly. So understanding that, POC, BIPOC, minority, these are some red flag indicators that you are reading a pimpish document, right? That somebody is attempting to pimp you for your Blackness.
Yes, Danae brought it up. Reminds them of having the first Black CEO of National NAACP. Yes. Actually, I think it was United College Negro Fund. It was the college, not the NAACP. It was the College Negro Fund, something.
Yeah, United Negro College Fund.
Because so it had the first one in 2021. In 2021, people.
NAACP, they were being jealous was the president. So
yes, I mean yes, that history there. But yes, this is where we're at with these institutions. And the comedian Kevin on stage just had a brain fart moment when he found out. He said, I didn't even question, because you just think that with a name like that you would have a certain anyway.
We're just not questioning things, man. You know what I'm saying? We have to start questioning things, because it's gonna affect us. You know what I'm saying? We let it slide for this long. And I remember hearing the term people of color a long time ago. And because none of us were being critical thinkers, and I say none of us, meaning the people that I was surrounded by, we weren't critical thinkers at the time. we just kept letting it slide, and next thing you know, some of us saying it. You
Mm-hmm.
know, we got to be more intentional when it comes to our language and to, you know what I'm saying, our politics, especially.
Solutions, people, solutions. So look, y'all not gonna like me when I say it because it's work, and I know we tired. We tired of working as Black people. We've been working for free. We work for a little bit of money, and we just working, just all the time working. However, in order to get out of this situation, we got to work some more, but work differently. And so, with the link that I dropped here, with it comes to George Floyd Act. Look, I'm highly suggesting, look, take the time to read over this document with your family over the dinner table, something, just have a little moment, talk to your children, your whoever in your life, and say, this, you know, what does this mean to you? What do you think about this? So that way more people can become questioners of what's going on in the society, even if you are not the one that's going to do the movement itself. Help be the one to spark the person who will, right? And that is what we're missing in our communities. We're not communicating with each other about these atrocities, these messes. And I remember being in one community session. It's absolutely true. Anyone watch Criminal Minds? You watch Criminal Minds, Kashama? All right, so they have this term. They got this term in Criminal Minds called the unsub, right, which stands for the unidentified subject. When it comes to looking at a person who probably committed the crime, and we need to start referring to these politicians as the unsubs. We need to start referring to these police officers and lawmakers and different things as the unsubs with the web board. You know, the crime web board. They got the sticky notes and the lines, because it's true they all sleeping with each other. It's true that they all got connections and networks. We need to be drawing these lines, because this is how you change things in this particular society. It's unfortunate, but it is true that you need to know who their friends are and how you can get in with that particular friend in order to change different things. And so they are all connected.
Now, another thing too, you want to talk about solutions. A lot of people, they, you know, will try to say, I try to act like they are apolitical, kind of like, well, you know, I'm not the one to be, you know, I'll fight the power, blah, blah. But y'all are a lot more political than you think you are, or than you say you are, because these politicians, they show up to churches, they show up to schools, especially Black colleges, where all you so-called educated Black folks are at. And instead of just being so desperate and so happy that they showing you the time of day, you need to get on code. You need to be saying, like, why do you have the former Philadelphia police chief heading the national task force on police oversight, right?
Yeah.
You need, you know what I'm saying? You need to say, why is that happening? Or, hey, or why is there a task force in my city, you know, and there are no Black people on it? And then they turn around to you and they say, well, it's actually, you know, 30% minority. And then you have to come back to them and say, hey, that's not Black. I'm talking about Black people. That, bro.
Yeah. Yeah, it's absolutely true. I remember in 2017, I worked for another organization at that time. And for those who don't know, 2016 was a rough year for Baltimore because the police officers were off their rocker and doing the most criminal acts and not being charged for it. But in 2017, there was a conversation around de-escalation topics at my job, and they decided to bring in a white officer to lead that a white Baltimore police officer to lead that discussion. I wore him out in that particular meeting. I said, what qualifications do you have for this? And no lie, people, by the end of it, he admitted that social workers, which was what the job field I was in, social workers have actually a lot more credibility to talk about de-escalation topics than the police officers do, because they had not been practicing them. They said that they had the material, but they had not been practicing it. And so information like that, it can help start changing at least some of these dialogues. Because after we had that conversation, I went to my boss at that time and I said, you got to think better. And you need to give all of these Black employees therapy for what you just put us through.
I'm telling you, man, need to be sued. But yeah, man, I mean, and it got to get to a point where we have to work in our best interest and not really give a damn about who's offended, because what we don't realize is that our very freedom and existence is offensive, you know, to some people and some groups. You don't understand. There was a time when a Black man walking on the sidewalk at the same time as a white person was offensive to them. You know what I'm saying? So if you're going to stay in this bag where you feel like you got to say Black and brown, so nobody don't feel like you're too radical, or you got to say people of color or minority so that nobody feels left out, then you're not going to make no change. You're not going to be effective. When we were criticizing to lift up your voice and speak up and shout and dance and buck dance for the mass on the plantation plan that Biden put forth, that's what I call it. When we were speaking out on it and when we were being critical of it, and we were going through that thing line by freaking line, Black people. And what did a lot of our people do? We just said, we're going to deal with it.
Danae asks, do we already have a podcast on ways to vote with our money? Black economy is intentional, can make capitalism kneel. I will look in, I'm pretty sure someone has already started that discussion somewhere.
Go to YouTube and check out, New Black Media. And I say New Black Media, that's just something that we call it, but you got Boyce Watkins, right? You got Fly Nubian Queen Network. You see what I'm saying? I mean, the list goes on. Once you start tapping into that, you start to find that there's a lot of Black media out here that's talking about Black wealth and economics. I mean, and they are touching some of the political aspect of it. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, there's power all around.
I want to speak to some anxiety real quick because I know it pops up. When we mention names, even if you happen to disagree with someone or you don't like them because they said blah, 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 go to them for what they are an expert in. I don't care how you feel about Boyce Watkins. The man knows how to make money and save money and reproduce money. And if you're looking for a subject matter on that, then go to him for that. And we need to use all of our people for our assets and our strengths, as opposed to using moments of disagreement in order to shut off all kinds of communication and dialogue with each other. Sonia Ross, who is a phenomenal Black poet, said it best. She said, "Speak not ill of someone else."
Sonia Sanchez.
I said Sonia Ross. Oh my God, I was looking at Sonia. I'm sorry. Sonia Sanchez, phenomenal Black poet from California from the Renaissance era. She said, "Speak not ill of someone else and watch it do favors in your life." And when it comes to Black people, and she also mentioned that the number one killer of any movement, and she's talking about Black people, was gossip. That's it, people.
Can you say that one more time, Duke, about what you said about shutting off all communication, like not using one disagreement? How did you put that?
I said, let's not use, rewind. I said, let's not use a single disagreement to shut off and cut off all communication and dialogue with one another. Disagreements happen, but that's all it has to be. It's just a disagreement. A friend of mine has a quote that I love to death, and it used to make me mad, but he used to say nothing bad happened. There would be a moment where I was upset about something or someone had upset me, and he would end it. He was like, you don't even have to react this way because nothing bad happened. It was just a moment. The moment's passed. Nothing bad happened. You still breathe.
Because you talk right.
Yeah.
You're referring to the aftermath or the results from whatever happened. You know what I'm saying? What were the results? So
yeah.
I mean, I'm with it. I mean, I think that can be picked apart or whatever. But on the surface level of what you're saying, I completely agree.
Yeah.
Somebody said conflict is not abuse. But hey, some people don't know that though, man.
Yeah, and look, and some of us falling for it, especially in these rainbow circles.
Yeah,
some of us is really falling for it. But like, oh no, you hurt my conceptual spirit. We can't talk no more. We really have to figure out better ways to navigate and communicate, because the shutting off of each other has not worked. The silos, and that's what it does. It creates the silos when we do that, and Black people cannot afford more isolation at all. But that is the end of this broadcast. I'm feeling, people. How you doing?
They doing all right. Nobody wanted to call in and talk to us.
Yeah.
It's okay. Sometimes y'all call in and we can't stop you from talking. Want to take over the whole broadcast. I ain't gonna call no names, but but it's been great having all of you Melanoids here with us. I mean, whether you call up or not, we are grateful and just happy to have you with us, because y'all are our family. We are family. So with that being said, I agree with you, Duke. I think we've done what needed to be done with this horse. It ain't dead yet, but we're gonna keep beating it some more on some other broadcasts. But without further ado, y'all, peace.